Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I'd take a look at my digital TBR, so this is all of the titles that I've got currently on my Kindle. I did this video about 6 months ago and since then I've read a few, I've discarded a few, and of course I've got a few new titles to add to the list. Let's go and take a look. So I've got two options with this video, but it doesn't affect many of you. I had a little giveaway kind of competition amongst my patrons on Discord for them to guess how many titles would be in this list. And there is one person who guessed the correct number exactly. So I'm going to give a book as a Christmas present to that person. So the options that I had were to give the number at the start of the video, or just to let the patrons count up for themselves and figure out who won. So I think I'm going to do that one, just as payback for all the fun and games they've given me when they've been voting on books for me to read this year. So with this one, I'm going to let Editing Dom do most of the heavy lifting with the animation and moving of all the titles within the carousel, which will be loaded here just now. And because there are quite a few titles to go through, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in each one, and we're just going to dive straight into it. So the first one on the list is actually the first book that was on the list last time as well, because it's still there. I haven't read it yet, but at some point I do hope to do so. And this is A Winter's Fury by A.E. Rain. This is book one in the Furyk saga. It's a kind of Norse-inspired fantasy, I believe. And I got this one for nothing when it was available on promotion, but I believe it is only about 77 pence normally in the UK and pretty cheap elsewhere as well. So it's a really good one to pick up as an introduction to the author and to this particular series. Next up is a review copy I've got of Season of Kings by A.J. Redclaw, and I should say at this point that I am organising these alphabetically by author first name, because that's how they appear on my spreadsheet when I was putting this list together. So this one, although I've got a digital review copy, I also have an audio review copy, so I might listen to this title when I get around to reading it. Next up on the list is another one that I picked up for nothing when it was on promotion on Amazon. This is Memories of Blood and Shadow by Aaron S. Jones, and I know Kay from Kay's Hidden Shelf really loves this author's work, and I'm looking forward to reading it and finding out for myself what it's all about. The first of my SPF B08 finalists reads is next. This is Mysterious Ways by Abby Evans, and it's one that I might not have picked up if it wasn't for reading all of the SPF B08 finalists, but it is one that I'm looking forward to, certainly a fair bit more than some of the others that are in that same list. I've got Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is another one that was on the list 6 months ago as well, but this one is one of the titles in my reading plan for 2023, so I am going to be getting to it before too long. Next we've got another one of the SPF B08 finalists. This is The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson, and this is the first book in, I think it's the Sharded Few, and it's one of the ones that I'm actually really looking forward to from the SPF B08 finalists. Next up is the Alex Robbins title The Broken Heart of Irelian, book one of the War of the 12, and again it's one of the ones that's been on my list for a long time since I picked up a free copy on Amazon, but I am going to get to this one at some point, and it's not too long. It's only about 250, maybe 300 pages if I remember rightly, so it should be easy enough to slot in among some of the bigger titles that I read. It's just a case of finding the right time to slot this particular one in. Next, and we're going back to my list of finalists for SPF B08, and this one is A Song for the Void by Andrew C. Piazza, and this is one that really doesn't suit my tastes. It's kind of historical fiction with cosmic horror vibes, and that really doesn't suit me, so I'm not sure how I'm going to get on with this one, but I can't exactly say I'm looking forward to finding out. Now we've got another one that I've also got on audio, or is available on audio at least, so I will be listening to this one. This is Wolfy Turd by Anthony Mitchell, and I've heard some really good things about this, so I can't wait to get to it, and I'll be doing so before too long, because it is one of the titles that's in my 2023 plan as part of the 10 self-pub that I want to read in the coming year. Another title set in the same world that I've also got as a review copy from the author is Tales from a Damanskan Fireside book one. This is The Scars of John Redclaw. So I'm looking forward to this one. I'm still undecided whether to try listening to Wolfy before I get to this one, or doing them in the other order. I don't think there's any kind of rule to say which way round you should read them. They're not linked in that particular way, but I am looking forward to both of the titles by this author. Next up, I've actually got a trio of books. This is books 2, 3 and 4 in Emaneska by Ben Galley. So we start off with Pale Kings, and that's going to be next up for me after I read the written, which is why it's now 3 books that are listed here instead of the 4 that it was last time I did this video. The other 2 books in this collection are Dead Stars Book 1 and Book 2 to finish off the series. Next up is The Blackest Heart by Brian Lee Durfee. This is the 5 Warrior Angels book 2. I'm partway through, nearly halfway through actually, book 1 in this series at the moment, so that one's no longer on this list, and I'll be looking forward to hopefully getting to book 2 at some point in 2023, depending on how I get on with book 1 in the series. One of my January to February titles is up next. I've got a review copy via NetGalley of The Shadow Casket, which is book 2 in the Darkwater Legacy by Chris Wooding. This is the sequel to The Ember Blade, which I had a really good time with last year, and I'm looking forward to getting into this one soon. I've got a couple of short stories that are on the list as well, and this is the first one, The Dollmaker of Calastra, which is a Kendrick and Topper story set in the world of the Beast Hunters by Krista Lender. So I had a good time with that one. It was a bit of a change of pace for me. I did listen to it on audio, but I do have this short story as, I think, a kind of introduction to that world. I think it's kind of prequel, but I'm not sure yet because I've not read it. I've got another review copy next. This is the Bindings of Woe, book 1 in the Chain of Worlds by Connor Jackson. Connor recently appeared in one of my indie author showcases to talk about this video, and I'll drop a link in the top corner so you can go and check out this book in his own words. Then I've got Kingfall by David Estes. This one is a beast of a book. I do actually have a copy on my shelf that was kindly sent by my friend the Bookish Gnome as part of a giveaway prize that I won from his channel. Do check it out. I'll leave a link in the description box below so you can go and have a look at some of his videos. I am looking forward to this title. It's been on my list for a good while. I've heard some good things about it, and at some point I am going to get to reading it. This one I think might be a novella by Devon Madsen. It's a prequel to the Vengeance trilogy, which I think is set in the same world as a Reborn Empire, but a little bit beforehand. So in effect, that's a prequel to these books that are just over my shoulder here. This one is called In Shadows We Fall, and it did sound quite interesting when I read about it, and it was available to me for free, so I picked it up. Then I've got Fangs of War by E.J. Doble. This is an indie fantasy that was in SPFB 08 and again was available for free, so I picked it up to try it out. I've heard a couple of people who've read this and said good things about it, but not too many people who are in my kind of circle have read it as yet, or at least not that I'm aware of. So I'm looking forward to getting into it and seeing what the author's all about. I've then got Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is book 1 of The Burning, and lots of people by contrast have read this one, and I generally hear good things about it, although you do have to take the rough with the smooth, especially when talking about a book that lots of people have read. So it is one that I'd like to get to at some point, but I'm not quite sure when that's going to be. I've got a review copy now of The Swordsman's Descent by G.M. White. This is the King's Champion book 2. I read the prequel novella and book 1 not too long ago, a few months ago, and I quite enjoyed them. It's kind of a low fantasy world. There's not many fantastical elements to it, but it was an enjoyable story and a good character who I enjoyed following. So I'm excited for this one. I think it's a bit longer than the first book, which was quite a short novel really, so this one might be something to get my teeth into a little bit more. I've then got 2 books from author Ginevra Mancinelli. These are the first 2 books in her Hello of Talons and Tears series. So we've got book 1 is A Realm of Stones and Whispers, and book 2 is A Cinder of Roses and Steel. These are on my list, or book 1 in this series is on my list to get to in 2023 because it's been sitting on my Kindle for far too long already. So I'm excited to finally get to it this coming year. Then we've got Cursorber Fallen by H.C. Newell. This one I was actually gifted by my friend Craig, known as Craig the Bookworm. Do check him out. I'll leave a link to his Twitter profile in the description box below. He reads a lot of good fantasy and has similar tastes to myself. For this book I've got a video from the author talking about it in her own words, but you won't have seen it yet because it's going to be in my upcoming indie showcase for December, so keep your eye out for that over the next week or so. I've then got another short story. This one is a sci-fi called Infinity by Herman Stauernagel. My next physical read after I finish with The Blood of the Spear, my current read, is going to be Eclipse, which is the new novel by this author coming out in February. And Infinity is a story set in the same world of the Fractured Orbit. So I might even read this one first as a bit of an introduction before I get to Eclipse. Another short story, or possibly a novella, I can't quite remember which, is by J.A. Andrews. This one is The Ghost of the White Wood, and it's set in her Dragon's Reach world, I think it is, as kind of an introduction to that series. So that's why I picked this one up, when it was part of a kind of package deal where you have various authors who collaborate together and offer their books for free or close to. So I did pick up a few books and short stories and novellas from there, and this is one of those. Then I've picked up a digital copy of the winner of SPFB 07. This is Reign and Ruin by J.D. Evans. I do have a copy on my shelf just above my head, but I do like to have a digital copy as well for when I read in bed or in the bath, because it's just easier to do. So a lot of the time I will pick up digital copies if I can get them, rather than carrying the physical book around everywhere when I'm reading. So this one, I've heard some really good things. My friend Terry has read it recently and surprised himself with how much he enjoyed it, and hopefully I'm going to enjoy it a lot as well. Another freebie I picked up is Daughter of Discord, Book 1 in the Stormage Saga by J.J. Green. I don't really know too much about this one. It's a sci-fi or maybe a science fantasy. It sounded quite interesting, and because it was available for nothing, I decided to take a shot at it and pick it up. One of the titles that's been on my list for a long time. This was the winner of the second or third iteration of SPFB way back several years ago. This is Orconomics by J. Zachary Pike. I still haven't got round to it. I'm not sure whether I will. I was umming and ahhing of whether I should remove it from my Kindle, because like the winner of SPFB 01, it's been on my list for a long time and I haven't read it to this point. So we'll see if I will, but for the moment it's staying on my digital TBR. One that I will be reading soon though is Book 1 in Melatu. This is No Heart for a Thief by James Lloyd Dulin, and this one is coming out in February, so I've scheduled it for January, although I may read it in December depending on how my physical reading goes this month. If I can fit it in, I've said that I will. If not, I'll be getting to it in January. But I've heard some really good things about this, and Craig the Bookworm, who I mentioned earlier, has recently put out a great review of it, really singing its praises. So definitely looking forward to it, and I hope to have a good time with it. Moving into some sci-fi for the next few, and I still haven't got to continuing with The Expanse, despite it being one of the books on my list, or one of the series on my list. But I do have Book 2, Calibans War by James S.A. Corey, on my Kindle, ready for whenever I do get to it. I've then got the first of a few titles by Jason Anspach and Nick Cole. These are the Galaxy's Edge series of books, and this particular one is Madame Guillotine, which is book 3 of the Tyrus Rex Contracts and Termination series. I have been enjoying this, but I've not touched it for a while. I picked them up as some of the books that I was reading when I was in a bit of a reading slump a couple of years ago, and I quite enjoyed them. I just haven't got round to finishing off this series and moving on to the next one, which is going to be the next 3 titles in this list. So the next one for me chronologically, I think, in that series is the Savage Wars, and book 1 of that series is just called the Savage Wars, and then I've got Gods and Legionnaires and the 100 ready to go as well for whenever I do get back to these books. A couple of short stories next, and I've got 2 for the Continua Chronicles world by Jim Wilborn. First up is First Blood, and then I've got Keeper of the Covenant as well. And these ones, I think they both tell the story, or an aspect of the story, from Telly, who is one of the main characters in the 7th Cadence. So although these are short stories and I enjoyed the main book that they're related to, I haven't got to these yet. They've been on my Kindle for a while. I should probably have a little splurge and read through all of the short stories that I've got at some point, because they're not going to take too long. I just haven't got round to them. And then I've got The Trials of Ashmount by John Palladino. So again, this is one that I've got a physical copy of, but I've picked up a 3 copy on digital format as well. Again, so I've got the flexibility of where and when and how to read the book. Next up, I've got An Ocean of Others by Joshua Scott Edwards. This is book 1, or the first dance, if you like, of Sibling Sons. Again, this is one that I've heard a lot of good things about, and I'm looking forward to at some point trying it out for myself. I also picked up a 3 copy of The Assassin of Grins and Secrets by K.E. Andrews. I like the cover of this one. I think it's quite atmospheric, and I'm hoping for a good story inside the pages as well. Book 1 in the World of Lunaria is next. This is Maroda by L.L. McRae, and again it's one that I've got a physical copy on my shelf, but I've had for a while actually, before the updated copy of this was released in physical format. I did get a review copy in digital format from the author, so I'm going to get to this one at some point soon, because again it's one of the titles that's on my self-pub list for 2023. Next up is Fate's Long Shadow by Marcella Carbo, and this is one of the titles that was in SBFB08, and I quite liked the cover of this one when I was listing my favourite covers from the competition this year, and when I saw it was available for free shortly after the SBFB08 competition started, I picked it up and added it to my list. I said before that I'm currently reading The Blood of the Spear, and I've got a digital copy of the prequel, I think it is, novella, which is called Starbinder. So I literally, this morning when I was doing some reading, came across the terminology Starbinder in The Blood of the Spear, so now I know what I'm going to be expecting when I get to read this one. And I mentioned this one kind of in passing earlier on. This is the winner of the first iteration of SBFBO, and I've had this one therefore on my Kindle for a good long time. It's The Thief Who Pulled on Trouble's Braids by Michael McClung. And when I was pulling together all of the cover images to go in the carousel that you see on the side of the video here, I did notice that there's a new cover for this one. I quite like it actually. I prefer it to the covers that I originally have seen and that I do have actually physically, if you like, on my Kindle. So I'm going to update to this one. I think it looks really cool actually. A review copy for a book which has only just been added to Goodreads and I've not been able to get a decent sized copy of the cover for yet is The Price of Power by Michael Michel. So I've had the review copy on my Kindle for a couple of months now, I think it is, just waiting for some more information on when the book's going to be released, and I think it's now looking to be January to February, so hopefully I'll be able to get to this one before too long. I've then picked up a few more digital copies of books that are on my shelves to allow me to read them on my Kindle as well. First of those in this particular batch is Blackstone Heart by Michael R. Fletcher. So this one is the first book in the Obsidian Path trilogy. I've got the first two books on the shelf above my head, so I'm hoping that I enjoy this one. And the next one of those is Ascendant by Michael R. Miller, which is next to Blackstone Heart above my head, as well as on my Kindle, so coincidence there. This is one which I really do like the cover for, but the hardcover copy that I've got is absolutely stunning, so I really do appreciate that one, and I'm looking forward to reading it as a result to see if it's good inside as well as out. Next I've got a little collection that I picked up for free some time ago on Amazon. This is by Morgan Stang and it's the Bartrams More series of books. So I've got a novella, I think it is, as book 0.5 in the series. That one is The Wolf and the She-Bear. And then I've got books 1 and 2, She Topples Giants and She Courts Darkness. So these ones are quite dark, I've heard. They've got a bit of a kick-ass heroine in them, and I'm definitely interested to try them out and see what I think. Another twofer that I've got here that I picked up recently, I saw these advertised on Twitter by the author MC Scrimgout and I took a look at them. They sounded interesting, so I picked up the first two to give a try out. So these are books 1 and 2 of the Way Stations Trilogy. I've got those left behind and those once forgotten. So at some point I'll get to these. I don't know when it's going to be, but I'm interested in checking them out as part of my sci-fi journey for the next year or so. Back to the SBFB08 finalists, I've got Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. This is another of the ones that doesn't really suit my taste, so I'm not really looking forward to it, but at least it's not a very long book, so hopefully it won't take me too long to get through whenever I do get to it. And then I've got Dream of Death City by PJ Nwosu. This is another one of the titles that was recently featured in one of my indie author showcases, so go check that one out to hear the author talking about this book in her own words. And then we're back to SBFB08 with Quenby Olsen's finalist, Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons, which again is not one of the titles that's really suited to me, but I think of those particular titles, this is the one that I'm most looking forward to because it does have a good amount of humour from what I can see in it, and it's about dragons but not Regency dragons, so maybe it's not too far a stretch for someone like me. We then move into Rob J. Hayes, and I've got two books from his Mortal Technique series. The third is on the shelf above my head there. So I've got Never Die and Pawn's Gambit. These again I've had on my Kindle for a while because I wanted to get into them, but I don't know when that's going to be, but they certainly haven't come up so far. I also picked up for nothing on Amazon his trilogy The Ties That Bind, so I've got 3 books here which I've scheduled for a buddy read at some point with my book bestie Nina, and I think we're going to be trying these out at some point in the first quarter or so of 2023. So with these we've got The Heresy Within, The Colours of Vengeance and The Price of Faith. Going into different competitions now, we've got the SPSFC, the self-published sci-fi competition, and last year's winner, the first winner of that competition, was Iron Truth by S.A. Folin, and I've read part of the first chapter of this and enjoyed it, so I immediately went out and picked up a full copy of the ebook so I can continue at some point soon. Another one that I picked up recently was The Dark Crown by S.C. Gowland, because I think this was a freebie that I quite liked the sound of, so I took a chance at it. It's got one of those kind of cool covers with lots of different kind of glowing magical elements in it that really draw the eye, so I think that's what attracted me to this one, but it does sound quite interesting reading the synopsis as well. Another series that I've picked up, or two books from a series perhaps, I'm not sure which. These are from the Children of the Nexus by S. Cave. I've got Between Starfalls and Let Loose the Fallen. A few people on one of the Discord servers I'm in read these last year and thought they were pretty decent. Picked them up for nothing on one of those batch promotions, but I haven't got around to checking them out as yet. Another freebie I picked up that I will be getting to is Obsidian Awakening by Sienna Frost. Again, this is one that I've got both a digital and physical copy for, and it's one of the ones that's on my self-pub list for 2023, so I will get to this one soon. I've then got Tethered Spirits by T.A. Hernandez. This is another one of my SPFB08 finalists, so I've picked up all of the ones that I haven't already read, with many of them coming from the authors, so thank you so much to all the authors who sent review copies for this little version of the competition that's being hosted by Covers with Cassidy. Another short story, I think this one is, that I picked up from one of those big promotions, is Pale Sword by T.L. Greylock, and she's an author whose works I've wanted to try out, so I wanted to read Pale Sword as an introduction to her writing style, and again I might do a little binge of the short stories that I've got, because there are a good little handful on my Kindle. I picked up a digital copy of Bones of the Wind to go with the physical one that I was sent by the author Tatiana Obi. This one looks pretty cool, and it's another one that was featured in one of my indie showcase videos. The ebook was available for 99p, so I thought I'll pick that up so I can read it at my leisure rather than just relying on the physical hardback. Getting towards the end of the list, and I picked up a copy for free of We Break Immortals by Thomas Howard Riley. This is a big chunker of a book. It's another one that I've got a physical copy of, so I'm quite happy to have a digital copy as well, because that one's going to be pretty weighty in the hands, especially if I'm reading in bed and resting that thing on my chest. So I'll be reading most of that one when I do get to it in digital format. Another one of the titles I've put on my self-pub to read list in 2023 is Queens of the Weird by Tamandra Whitecastle. So again, this is one that I've had on my list on my Kindle for a good long time, but I will be getting to it because I've committed to reading it in 2023. I've also picked up, I think it's a novella from the same author called Bloodwitch, which I think's got a really cool cover, and I hope that I like what's inside it as well. I think we're to the end of my freebies that I've picked up now. This last one is Seekers Winds of Change by Troy Knowlton, which is another one that I was sent a physical copy of by the author, and I've got available to read on Kindle as well for whenever I do get to it. A sci-fi that I've had my eye on for a little while is Fox Gambit by Yoon-Ha Lee, and I haven't tried it out yet, but it did sound quite interesting, so I picked up a copy of it a little while ago, but then it's just sat on my Kindle waiting for me to get to it. I'm not sure when it's going to be, but I am definitely still interested in trying this one out. And then at the end of my list, because I'm in alphabetical order by author, is Zach Argyle, and I've got a short story that he's written after finishing the Threadlight series. This one is called 5 Silver Rings, and again it's a short story. I've got no real excuse because it won't take me long to get to, but I just haven't done so yet. So there you go, that's my what I call digital TBR, the list of all of the ebooks that I've currently got on my Kindle. I'm hoping to get rid of quite a few of these in 2023 by virtue of reading them and therefore removing the TBR element from it. I don't know how I'll get on with that, and of course I don't know how many more I'm going to add in to replace them. If there's any of these that you've read and you think that I need to get to sooner rather than later, drop me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. That's everything for today. I hope you found this kind of showcase interesting. I'll catch you in the next video sometime soon, but until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.